Hello! So today we're going to show you how to modify these gloves so that they work with the current trackers. Everything you see here is what you need. I'm going to go over it. You need either a tape measure or a ruler, needle and thread, some kind of marking implement. I'm going to be using a nice bright fabric pen so you can see what I'm doing, but you can literally just use a pen. A seam ripper. Definitely recommend a thimble. Some scrap fabric. You can just get a fat quarter from Walmart. You don't need a ton of fabric. Some fabric scissors. Some Velcro that splits apart. Make sure it does not have an adhesive backing because that's going to cause a problem for you. And again, you can get that from Walmart. Super cheap. And obviously the glove. And that's it. You can literally get all of this, with the exception of the fabric. And again, you can just, the fabric and the Velcro. You can literally get this in like a pretty cheap basic sewing starter kit at Walmart. That's all you need. This is very, very approachable. So, the first thing you need to do is you need to grab your fabric. Let me clear my space here a little bit. Give me a second. You need to grab your fabric and you need to make sure that you're going to cut on that you're going to draw and cut on a fold here. And you need to measure out a piece that is 7 inches long and 1/2 inch wide. So that's what I'm going to do here. Inches long, 1/2 inch wide. Okay. And again, make sure it's on a fold, because it's going to be a sleeve. And so you're going to create a little pocket with this. And it seems super long. It'll make sense why in a second here. You can adjust it for your own needs. We found this is a length that works pretty well for average. Depending on how long your thumb is, because it's going to be for the thumb for the tracker. Depending on how long your own thumb is, you may need to make this longer. You might need to make it a little shorter. We found 7 inches works about average. So you may need to adjust that a little bit. You might need to cut the fabric a couple times, which is why a fat quarter works, because you can get a couple pieces out of that. And then what you need to do with it is, this is where you need your needle and thread. You're going to sew one of the edges, one of the short edges, and the long edge that you just cut, closed at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So just 1/8 of an inch in. You can use a running stitch. You don't need anything more than that, because you just need it to be a sleeve. It's not going to have a lot of strain or pressure on it. Let me do that real quick. And the only reason you need, like I said, you just need a running stitch. So it'll go nice and quick and easy. Part of it is because of how long it is. The other part of it is the fact that it's literally just serving as a sleeve. So you don't need anything, you don't need anything complicated. And, if there are enough people who don't know, like, running stitches, like, the only stitches that you might need for this are a running stitch or a back stitch for the entire thing. If there are enough people who don't know what those mean, I will be happy to link to, videos for what I think are good, ways to teach a running stitch and a back stitch. But I will show you a running stitch here. It's very, very simple. It's just in and out, in and out. Let me get to a corner here. Like, your running stitch is like your like most basic stitch. So this is like, there's nothing complicated about this. We tried to make this as easy and approachable as possible. And that's literally just the running stitch right there. Is it's literally just your regular stitch. I do not have a sleeve prepared. Because we tried this before with a little bit of a shorter sleeve and found that it was a little too short. So I'm going to make this on the fly. I'm going to attempt to make it on the fly anyway. Here you really don't need the thimble. You will need the thimble for the Velcro. Because the Velcro gets a little bit difficult to sew. And that thimble is going to save your fingers. So you can literally just weave this in and out of the fabric. Nice and simple. Nice and basic. And just go down the edge. Doesn't have to be pretty, just has to be functional. Please don't knot. I'm asking you nicely. There we go. So it'll look something like that. And then once you get to the end, just knot off your fabric. Or just knot off your thread. Okay. So that's the first step. And I'm just going to double check here before I get any farther and make sure that it actually does, in fact, fit on the thumb. Looks like it does, but I'm going to double check here if it'll cooperate with me. That's the pinky. Okay, good. It does fit. It looks like it's really long. That's okay. It needs to be that long in the first place. Again, you can adjust it. It's got to go around the end of your thumb. I'll explain in a second. So the next thing you want to do after you make sure that it actually does fit on the sleeve the way, or the sleeve fits the way it's supposed to. The next thing you want to do, and you're going to want to adjust this for your own thumb. This is for demonstration purposes only. Is you want to take the plastic, the hooks part, the hook part of your Velcro, and you want to put it on the end. And then I would measure down about 1/8 of an inch below that and draw a line. That's probably about 1/4 of an inch below that, but whatever. Close enough. Let me close those scissors up there. And then what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to stitch that closed. So literally just stitch this closed here. And the reason you're going to do that is to keep is to keep this from going anywhere and just to secure this closed. You don't have to technically, but it'll make sure that the Velcro has a place to go. And it'll make sure that if this does start, it'll make sure that the thumb does start to slide, it has a place to stop. My thread came out. That wasn't nice. If you find this part a little tedious, like it's optional. You don't have to do this. But again, it gives the Velcro a place to stay. It also helps you mark where your Velcro is going to go. But again, this piece is optional. Oh my goodness, it won't. You know what? I'm not going to fight with that anymore. So the next thing that you want to do, this is where you're going to want your thimble. Because the next thing you need to do is you need to sew this piece of Velcro on. The hooks part of the Velcro is a pain in the butt. So this is why you want your thimble, because you're going to need the thimble to push the needle through the Velcro piece. I have not found an easier way to do this, other than just using a thimble and brute force. I mean, I guess you could staple it technically, but I don't know how safe and secure that would be after repeated use. So I would definitely recommend sewing it. Let me knot my thread here before I put my thimble on. Okay, so this is where it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. This, I would recommend, if you know how to backstitch, I would highly recommend backstitching this, just for security's sake. If you don't know how to backstitch, a running stitch works just fine. And thread not knotting works fine too. My goodness, what the heck happened here? There we go. And the reason you want to backstitch this is because, especially because this is the hooks part of it, this is what gets the most work and the most pressure. So you want to make sure that this is nice and secure on your little sleeve here. It's a lot of work. I will warn you, it's a lot of work. This is probably the most work your needle and thread is going to get. Or this is definitely the most work your needle and thread is going to get. And you're definitely going to want the thimble to save your fingers. So definitely use it. Doesn't have to be pretty, just has to work. But again, I would definitely recommend a backstitch here. A backstitch is a little bit more of a secure stitch than a running stitch. So it will, please don't knot. So it'll stay a little better. You're probably only going to get about 3 or 4 stitches in which is another reason that a backstitch will probably help you here, because it'll be a lot more secure. And then it'll look something like that. Let's knot my fabric off here. So this is what your sleeve looks like. You can set that aside for right now. Let me set the tracker out of the way. And then the next thing you're going to do is you need to attach the other piece of Velcro. This is much, much easier to attach because it's the cloth part of the Velcro. I'd still recommend using a thimble because it is a little tough to get through all of that thickness. And you want to attach it to the glove right below the seam. So it's not difficult to attach, and the reason you want to put it that close is so that you can actually, you actually have room to use your stitching. If you put it too much lower than that, you're going to struggle. And this is part of the reason why this sleeve is so long here, so that when you fold it, it will attach correctly. So let me get my needle and thread started here. Oops. And again, backstitching is very difficult here. So this is going to be a running stitch. I would make the stitches small if I can. Just for the simple fact that, you really can't backstitch here just because it's the nature of the beast. It is very awkward to sew here. I will be honest with you, but it's doable, as you will see. It is doable. Did my thread come out? My thread came out. I say it's doable, and then my thread comes out. Let's knot that a little better, shall we? There we go. That's nice and secure now. Let me get my thimble going here. What in the world are you doing? There we go. And I think I might be able to fit one more stitch in here. I'm just going to pull that through, and then I will knot it off onto the fabric. If it'll come through. Please come through. This is what I mean about how tough it is, which is why I highly recommend that thimble, because that would not feel good on your actual finger. Okay, and then you can see the stitching there. I got about 3 stitches into it. That's probably all you're gonna get for the size Velcro that you need. You don't need a lot. And then I'm gonna knot it off. And not drop my needle. Okay, so now you've got your sleeve set up, you've got your Velcro set up. So the next thing you need is you need to seam rip, and this is where you need your seam ripper. And again, this comes in a basic like cheapy sewing kit in Walmart, so you don't need to buy like all of these things separately for the most part. You need to seam rip the thumb and the pinky, and the seam you're going to be ripping here is this seam right here along the top. It's pretty easy. Once you get under one thread, most of the rest of them should come out pretty easily. So if you start on one side and go to the other side, it should be pretty easy to come out. And then the next thing you want to do is, once you've seam ripped it, you want to make sure it separates. Because what you're doing is you're separating this top layer where the tracker slides into the glove from the part that your finger goes into. So these two will be 2 separate entities up here now. And you're going to do that to the thumb and to the pinky. It comes out pretty easy. Okay, those two are separate now. The next thing you want to do, this is where we're going to start cutting into the glove itself. We've just taken care of seams and stitching now. This is where you're going to start cutting into the glove itself. There's 2 places you want to cut the glove. And you're going to want to be careful, really careful with one of them. One of them is really easy. One of them you're going to want to be careful with. So first thing you're going to want to do is, this opening here is a little too small for the tracker itself. So to make it a little bit easier to get that in there, what you want to do is you want to take your scissors and snip into these corners here. Make sure you don't go through the seam, only snip up to the seam. And what that does is it releases the pressure a little bit and gives that opening a little bit more space to move. Just please make sure you don't actually cut through the thread, otherwise you're gonna run into some more problems. All right, so that's the easy part. And then you can see this obviously gives you a little bit more spread. It's still going to be a tight fit. Fair warning. It is still going to be a tight fit, but that gives you just that little bit of extra breathing room. Here's the part that's a little bit more of a challenge. Let me get that needle and thread out of here. Here's the part that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. The next place you need to cut, and this is the last modification you need to make, is you're going to cut the top layer only, so this white layer only on the pinky, and you're going to cut to where the webbing meets. And you're going to cut along this spot right here. Make sure you're only getting that top layer. You don't want to cut this black layer here. So you might want to cut just a little bit away from the seam to make sure that you're not catching that black layer. And again, you're going to cut from here and you're going to stop right here. And then you're going to do just a little bit more sewing and then you're done modifying the glove. Be extra careful here. Okay. Well, I did catch it a little bit. You can see I caught a little bit of a hole. That's okay. It's not going to damage anything. I caught just a little bit of a hole. I didn't cut the whole thing. I snagged. That's fine. It's not a tragedy. So the last thing you're going to do, you need your needle and thread one more time. And what you're going to do is you're going to make a tack right here where you stopped. Tack is super, super simple. Basically, you're going to sew across here about 4 to 6 times so that this doesn't split any further. And that's the last piece to this puzzle. So let's knot the thread. And then literally, not my thread, please. And then literally you are just going to come across here through this little cut you made. You can use the thimble here. It might be a little tough for some people's hands. I sew a lot, so it doesn't bother me. But if you need the thimble, you need the thimble. It's not a big deal. And you're literally just going to come across here, your comfort level, about 4 or 6 times, 4 to 6 times, and not get caught on everything, just to make sure that this doesn't split any further. It's called a tack, and that's all you're doing is you're just tacking this down so that you're not damaging the glove, you're just modifying it. I think that was number 4. I'm going to do one more. And then knot yourself off, and you're done. Okay, putting these trackers in makes me very, very nervous. So I am going to have somebody else show you how to put the tracker into the glove because it truly makes me uncomfortable.
All right, so what we do is with the Velcro side down, you will slip it over the thumb, making sure to get the backing of it as well. And if you need to push it down a little bit more just to give yourself some room, you can. Fold it over. And then this part it is difficult still to get in here because these gloves were not designed for these trackers. But if you're gentle, it should be fine. All right, let's see. The seams are all open, so it should fit in here nicely. And just very gently thread in the fingers into the channels. Just gotta ever so gently do it because you don't want to force them and risk damaging the boards. All right, let's move that out of the way. Get the pinky in. And just gently slide it, just one finger at a time, making sure it's not binding. Once you get it about halfway in, fold this over and we'll gently thread the thumb through. Bring the thumb up a little bit. We'll start getting that through. And then once we're out, go. Now that the thumb's in, we can very gently start running these the rest of the way down the channels. And bring this over. Slide that down over the middle. And then just Velcro it in place. And then let's check the fit. All right, feels like they're sitting okay. Let me just lay it down. Get the Velcro on. And now this part, you can see it comes down over your finger. And now when you move your thumb, it will move with it. There's a little bit of play in this one, so you always can just adjust it as need be. So like this one, for me, since there's a tiny bit of play in it, you can always slide it down a little bit more in the channel to adjust it as need be. So let's see. I will open this back up and we'll pull it a little bit farther down on the tracker. There we go. That should remove that play. And again, adjust it for your thumb as need be. This ends up being a little bit more art than science. There we go. And now it flexes with your thumb. And all your fingers should be good. And you can see with the pinky, it sticks out just ever so slightly. The thumb is the main one. But the big thing to remember is these are the alphas. And once EOZ makes their own gloves, these will be a lot easier to go in, and it'll be a lot easier to set up. But for now, we'll be able to test these, and as more feedback comes in, we can also revise the design. If you need anything, feel free. Both me, Moya Nyamses, or Kylene Nyamses will be available in the channel to help out any way we can with setup or with any questions or concerns. Well, thank you very much for your time.